Welcome, friends, to another Ask a Bhante. So, I have an interesting question today, and it's quite a complicated one. I actually had to really look up the term because this is not something you see. It's not something from the suttas. It is a kind of a um, modern term. But the question is this: have you ever struggled with spiritual materialism before? If yes, did it wear off over time? So I had to be like, well, I mean, I've heard this term before, but I don't really know what it is. What is it? And so I, did some Google work, really. Um, and actually, it kind of has different people have different understandings of what it means. But I guess I'll read it. I mean, I can read and then riff off it, I guess. Spiritual materialism is a phrase originally coined by Crazy Wisdom himself, Chogyam Trungpa Rinpoche, that he used to describe the grasping after material accomplishment within the context of spiritual pursuit. His characterization is not novel, rather it echoes the sentiment that has been addressed by spiritual teachers and the wisdom of teachings through the centuries. He wrote that we are often deceiving ourselves into thinking we are developing spiritually, when instead we are strengthening our egocentricity through spiritual techniques. The phrase refers to a common spiritual pitfall, using our practice to boost the ego versus transcendent. Spiritual narcissism. That's an interesting term, spiritual narcissism. I have experienced that, at least from other people, as part of being a human. Spiritual materialism involves the belief that suffering can be magically obtained through self-indulgent pursuits, camouflage as consecrating rituals, through systems and philosophies. This means that we're often believe that we're emerging spiritually. However, we're instead fortifying our egoism until utilizing spiritual techniques. Oh, here's other people have called it overt or vulgar spiritual materialism. Desire for material gain through spiritual means. So this is, has a couple different contexts. And, to be honest with you, I don't know that I have struggled with spiritual materialism before. I mean, I especially in my 20s, in my early days there, I struggled with lots of arrogance, lots of thinking I knew better. But, by the time I was like really on a spiritual journey, I was kind of beyond that. So I don't know that I mean, it's an interesting question. It really is. I tried, in the beginning of my Buddhist journey, when I was exploring all the traditions and stuff, I tried different various rituals and things like that. And, I found that they didn't really do anything for me, and I didn't want to do them, so I didn't do them. And, later on, I adapted some when I realized what the point was. But, I think in a situation like this, with spiritual materialism, is you have to keep reflecting on what's your goal. Why are you doing all of this? What's the point of this? What is the point? Is the point to follow the Noble Eightfold Path and eventually end your suffering? Is the point to have a schwanky desk at work with all kinds of trinkets and, Buddhist prayer flags and stuff, and people are like, "Ooh, this is neat"? What's the point? Always come back to that. What's the point? Why am I doing this? What am I benefiting from doing this? What's the point of this? Another thing with me is like being kind of like, I don't know, like really into like ancient wisdom and like, going on quests and fantasy stuff and things like that. It was just kind of like, okay, well, this is my journey, right? This is my journey of spiritual awakening. So, yeah, I mean, maybe it's just maybe it's just that, karma from past lives that I can't really think of. I can't really think of anything coming up where I'm, reading the different understandings of what spiritual materialism might be, what it actually is. But I would say really really investigate your intentions. Why are you doing this? What is the purpose of this? And keep that in mind as you're going along. Keep that in mind. Because yes, I mean, you go to a retreat center, monastery, and you meet all kinds of people who come visiting. And not all of them are really there for a quest, for a journey, right? For a path of spiritual awakening. And so that's up to them. Even in, their kind of more diluted state, coming to the monastery could be beneficial in future lives. But what's your purpose? So I guess that's what really all I can say about this. What is your intention for doing what you're doing, and why are you doing it? Your intention. That's the important thing. Okay? If you realize, I'm kind of doing this to surround myself with trinkets, or I'm doing it because, I can post, wise things on Facebook and get like wise points, likes and things like that. Well, then maybe you should think about trying something else, right? Or focus on trying to find a better reason to do what you're doing. Let me just quickly read through here just to see if there's any kind of other points I wanted to mention. Oh, by the way, this is from Dan. I never mentioned Dan's name. So thank you, Dan, for do this. If yes, does it simply wear off over time? I don't think it would wear off over time, unless it's through wisdom, right? If you're not gaining wisdom, if you're so deluded that you're kind of really not gaining wisdom on the path, it's not going to wear off. Maybe you're lucky that you do start to gain a little teeny bit of wisdom and it starts to wear off. I can remember, okay, something comes up. I don't know if it's spiritual materialism, but I can remember in the early days when I was visiting Bhavna, like, even it was kind of like this with, no, I can remember like kind of like there was a part of me, it wasn't like really controlling me because I had been meditating by the time I found Bhavana, I was a Buddhist for 3 years. I was a meditator for like 6 by that point. But I can remember like almost feeling like this kind of pride, or like, I'm, showing off like I'm an advanced practitioner kind of a thing like that. I can remember seeing that kind of arise in my mind. I don't believe, at that point, because also at that point I had already started getting my first glimpses into anatta. Like I wasn't like a brand new meditator at this point. So I didn't like let that control me per se, but I caught myself. especially, especially when you are kind of a lay person who is a bit further than other lay people and kind of knows more than other lay people, and they start asking you questions, and it can be very easy to kind of be like, ooh, yeah. I don't know if that's spiritual materialism, but it just brings up to kind of explain, like, yeah, there's these kind of the committee of the mind. The mind is going to have various competing intentions and motivations. And so, it's up to you to kind of steer away from these unskillful motivations. Right? That's the point. So remember, reflecting on why are you doing in this in the first place? What's the real reason for, right? And why you're doing this in the first place, and your intentions behind it, and what are you getting out of it? Reflect on these things, and if you do that even over and over and over and over again, then eventually you'll get past these things, and they can be in the past. And I think that's all I have to say about that. Dan, thank you for submitting that question. It's a question that I've actually been I think Dan submitted this like maybe almost a year ago. And I've been pushing it aside because it's like, I don't know what to say about this. I don't know what to say about this. But I think now is the time. This is as best of an answer I'm going to be able to give. So, okay, Dan, thank you very much. And if you have any questions you'd like me to ask, please put them down in the comments. Suki Hotu. Practice well and be well.